Good movies depend on great writing, creative casting, direction, acting, as well as set decoration, makeup, wardrobe, sound, and of course special effects. Now, cinema science fiction is the most visually dynamic projection of the genre, and this is where we can visually go over the top in creating a sense of wonder. There are three individuals, all Georges, that we need to make special reference to and pay homage to with regards to this sense of wonder. The first is a Frenchman by the name of George Melies. In 1895, he went to what might be considered one of the first movie presentations, a commercial presentation in a Parisian cafe that was by invitation of two French film pioneers, Auguste and Louis Lumiere, who were presenting moving pictures. Well, George Melies, who was a theatrical showman, he had his own magic theater in Paris, was totally smitten with this new technology. He specialized in illusions and he wanted this more than anything else. So he contacted them and they would not sell it to them. They were making good money off it, but he was able that summer to procure himself the technology, actually from England, and started to play with it and started to make little 10-second, 30-second, 1 minute, then 2 minute little movies that he would show in between his music acts in his theater. I guess we might nominate him for the father of special effects. He created an extraordinary large body of work and covered everything from William Shakespeare to Jules Verne. In 1902, he made an unheard of 21-minute long movie called Le Voyage dans la Lune, Trip to the Moon, based on a Jules Verne story, and it might be considered the first science fiction epic. One of the oldest clips of film that we have was remade by the Space Channel uh, as a station logo with the moon with the space capsule in its eye. From France to Hungary, the next George that we want to honor is George Pal. Trained as an architect, he made his money in animation as an illustrator for the growing cigarette industry. Uh, Made a lot of money out of advertising, actually animating cigarettes in cartoons and for the new television shows that were requiring advertising. Built several studios throughout Europe specializing in servicing the advertising industry. Just after World War II, or around World War II, he ended up with a long-term contract with Paramount Studios uh, in their Puppetoon division, since that was his specialty. He had an extensive portfolio and was really ended up being a one-man special effects industry during the 1950s. People loved to work for George Pal. He had great people skills. He was an excellent boss to work for. And he won all the equivalents of the Oscar special effects during the 50s. Some of his breakthrough director works, movies that he got to work on during the 50s were Destination Moon, basically based on a Robert Heinlein story, When Worlds Collide, and then War of the Worlds and The Time Machine, two H.G. Wells productions for which he's still remembered. And the special effects in both of these still, possibly retro, still seem very fresh to us today. His work showed phenomenal creativity and passion, and he was very successful in creating that needed sense of wonder. He pushed the envelope in the special effects industry, and many people that worked for um, George Pal went on in claymation and other parts of the special effects to contribute to the filmmaking industry. And we thank George Pal for his contributions. Our next George, of course, is George Lucas. George is really the only of the three that was trained in film as a University of Southern California film graduate. An obsessed perfectionist, a workaholic. He first won an award as part of his graduate studies for THX 1138, and Warner Brothers, as the prize for the best graduate project, offered him a budget to make it into a movie. It did not get the marketing support at that time and really didn't do well, but of course after his Star Wars fame several years later on, THX was released again and became a bit of a cult classic. It's still on the shelf for you to watch. He made his millions first. His first major movie was a movie called American Graffiti in 1973, which still holds the record for the largest ratio return. This movie made less than was made for less than $1 million. I believe it's close to $850,000, and returned over 50 million for a 60 to 1 ratio. The largest, the most profitable movies to date, which rival even close to $1 billion. Most of them cost $100 million or so to make and have ratios at best of 10 to 1. So the 50 to 1 ratio was absolutely phenomenal for George Lucas's production of American Graffiti. He basically took his millions that he made, and he was always a bit of an outsider in Hollywood. He moved out of Los Angeles, Hollywood, started basically Skywalker Ranch, not yet so named, but where he worked on his next project. He wanted to do a movie on Flash Gordon, but was not able to get the movie rights from the original comic book, the people that held the rights to the original comic book. So he made his own story in which he combined elements of Tarzan and Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and all his heroes from his comic book days, his rock and roll days in California, and came up, of course, with Star Wars and the Star Wars industry, if you wish. Followed by The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then the next three movies after that. Though I am very grateful for the Star Wars industry, we're not here today to thank George for that part of his portfolio. George is now the major provider of special effects and sound for Hollywood, and he's built a corporate empire represented by Lucasfilm, LucasArts, and Lucas Digital, a reorganized form of his original company that he built to handle the special effects for Star Wars, called Industrial Light and Magic. Today, if you go to the theater and watch a romantic comedy, a western perhaps, I would venture to guess that 9 out of 10 times at the end, when you watch the credits, you will find mention of either Industrial Light and Magic or Skywalker Sound, which are, as I say, pushing the envelope today and providing these special effects and these services to all of the industry. Many feel that George will be 100 years from now probably remembered as much for what he did for the industry as for his major creation, Star Wars. So for making the impossible possible, and for dedicating themselves to that sense of wonder which has made science fiction so exciting to watch, we thank you, George, for fooling us all in the most entertaining way.